The halls of Congress were abuzz with whispers and speculation. A blockbuster scandal had rocked Washington, and at the center of it was none other than House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The allegations were explosive. Leaked documents suggested that Pelosi had been involved in a covert operation to manipulate intelligence related to the January 6th Capitol riot. The news sent shockwaves through the political world, with pundits and politicians alike scrambling to make sense of the revelations. But just as calls for Pelosi's impeachment began to gain traction, an unlikely figure stepped forward to defend her. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the firebrand Republican known for her controversial statements and staunch support of former President Donald Trump, shocked everyone by ruling out impeachment. Her reasoning? Pelosi, she claimed, was responsible for the January 6th riot, and that made her untouchable. The scandal broke on a quiet Tuesday morning. A whistleblower, whose identity remained shrouded in mystery, had leaked a trove of documents to the press. The documents allegedly showed that Pelosi had orchestrated a scheme to exaggerate the threat of violence on January 6th, using manipulated intelligence to justify a heavy-handed response from law enforcement. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed, "Pelosi caught in blockbuster scandal," and "Did the speaker manipulate January 6th?" Social media exploded with reactions, ranging from outrage to disbelief. Pelosi's office issued a swift denial, calling the allegations baseless and politically motivated. But the damage had been done. Within hours, calls for Pelosi's impeachment began to surface. Republicans seized on the scandal, with many demanding an immediate investigation. "This is a betrayal of the American people," declared Representative Jim Jordan at a press conference. "Nancy Pelosi must be held accountable." Even some Democrats expressed concern. "If these allegations are true, it's deeply troubling," said Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in a carefully worded statement. "We need to get to the bottom of this." As the pressure mounted, Pelosi remained defiant. "I have nothing to hide," she told reporters outside the Capitol. "These allegations are a desperate attempt to distract from the real issues facing this country." Just as the calls for impeachment reached a fever pitch, Marjorie Taylor Greene dropped a bombshell. At a hastily arranged press conference, Greene stunned everyone by announcing that she would not support impeaching Pelosi. "Nancy Pelosi is responsible for the January 6th riot," Greene declared, her voice dripping with conviction, "and that's why she must remain in office." The room erupted into chaos. Reporters shouted questions, while Greene's supporters cheered and her detractors looked on in disbelief. "Let me be clear," Greene continued, holding up a hand to silence the crowd. "Pelosi orchestrated the events of January 6th to further her own agenda. She wanted chaos, and she got it. Impeaching her now would only play into her hands." Greene's statement sent shockwaves through Washington. Republicans were divided, with some praising her for exposing the truth, and others accusing her of undermining their efforts to hold Pelosi accountable. Democrats, meanwhile, were left scrambling to respond. "This is absurd," said Representative Adam Schiff, shaking his head in disbelief. "Marjorie Taylor Greene is peddling conspiracy theories to protect Nancy Pelosi. It's beyond comprehension." But Greene's message resonated with her base. At rallies across the country, her supporters embraced the narrative, chanting, "Pelosi planned January 6th" and "Greene for Speaker." The controversy only deepened the divisions in an already polarized nation. But Greene's message resonated with her base. At rallies across the country, her supporters embraced the narrative, chanting, "Pelosi planned January 6th" and "Greene for Speaker." The controversy only deepened the divisions in an already polarized nation. For Pelosi, the situation was a nightmare. The allegations against her were false, but Greene's defense had twisted the narrative in a way that made it impossible to refute without appearing complicit. "This is a trap," Pelosi confided to her chief of staff, John. "If I deny it, they'll say I'm covering up. If I ignore it, they'll say I'm guilty." John nodded, his expression grim. "We need to change the narrative, but how?" Pelosi sighed, her mind racing. "We need to focus on the facts. The truth will come out eventually. But in the meantime, we can't let them control the story." As the scandal continued to dominate the headlines, the identity of the whistleblower remained a mystery. Rumors swirled, with some suggesting it was a disgruntled staffer from Pelosi's office, and others speculating it was a high-ranking Republican trying to destabilize the Democratic leadership. One evening, as Pelosi sat in her office, she received a call from an old friend, a retired CIA operative named Margaret. "I think I know who the whistleblower is," Margaret said, her voice low and urgent. "But you're not going to like it." Pelosi's heart sank. "Who is it?" Margaret hesitated. "It's someone close to you, someone you trust." The revelation hit Pelosi like a punch to the gut. The whistleblower was none other than her longtime aide, Sarah. Sarah had been with Pelosi for over a decade, a trusted confidant and loyal supporter. But according to Margaret, Sarah had been secretly working with a shadowy group of Republican operatives to undermine Pelosi's leadership. Pelosi confronted Sarah in a tense meeting. "How could you do this?" Pelosi demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "After everything we've been through?" Sarah looked down, her face pale. "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. "They threatened my family. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd ruin me." Pelosi's anger gave way to sadness. "You should have come to me. We could have fought them together." Sarah shook her head. "It's too late for that. I'm sorry, Nancy. I really am." The revelation of Sarah's betrayal sent shockwaves through Pelosi's inner circle. Her staff was devastated, and the media frenzy only intensified. But Pelosi refused to let the scandal define her. "We're not going to let them win," she told her team. "We're going to fight back." Pelosi launched a counteroffensive, holding a press conference to expose the truth. "This scandal is a fabrication," she declared, her voice steady and strong. "It's a desperate attempt to distract from the real issues facing this country. But I will not be silenced." The press conference was a turning point. While the allegations continued to swirl, Pelosi's defiance resonated with her supporters. The tide began to turn, albeit slowly. Meanwhile, Greene found herself at a crossroads. Her defense of Pelosi had alienated many of her Republican colleagues, but it had also solidified her position as a leader of the party's far-right wing. At a rally in Georgia, Greene doubled down on her claims. "Nancy Pelosi is the architect of January 6th, she declared to thunderous applause, "and we're going to make sure the American people know the truth." But behind the scenes, Greene faced mounting pressure. Some Republicans accused her of undermining their efforts to hold Pelosi accountable, while others warned that her conspiracy theories were damaging the party's credibility. As the scandal continued to unfold, the House Ethics Committee announced it would launch an investigation into the allegations against Pelosi. The move was seen as a compromise, with both sides hoping to uncover the truth. The investigation was fraught with tension. Republicans accused Democrats of obstructing the process, while Democrats accused Republicans of pursuing a witch hunt. The hearings were marked by heated exchanges and dramatic moments, with both sides digging in their heels. After weeks of testimony and evidence gathering, the truth finally emerged. The whistleblower's documents were revealed to be forgeries, part of an elaborate scheme orchestrated by a group of rogue Republican operatives. The goal, according to investigators, was to destabilize Pelosi's leadership and sow chaos in the Democratic Party. The revelation was a bombshell. Republicans were forced to backtrack, while Democrats seized on the opportunity to discredit their opponents. "This was a coordinated attack on our democracy," Pelosi declared at a press conference. "But we will not be intimidated. We will continue to fight for the truth." In the weeks that followed, the political landscape began to shift. Pelosi's approval ratings rebounded, while Greene's credibility took a hit. The scandal, while damaging, had ultimately strengthened Pelosi's position as a leader who refused to back down in the face of adversity. Greene, for her part, remained defiant. "This isn't over," she told her supporters. "The fight for the truth goes on." But the damage had been done. The scandal had exposed the deep divisions in American politics, and the road to healing seemed long and uncertain. Sarah, the whistleblower whose betrayal had rocked Pelosi's world, found herself in a precarious position. After the revelation that the documents she had leaked were forgeries, she became a pariah. The media hounded her, and her former colleagues shunned her. Fearing for her safety, she went into hiding, relying on a network of sympathetic friends to keep her off the grid. One night, as she sat in a dimly lit safe house, Sarah received a call from an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. "Hello?" "Sarah, "It's Nancy," came the familiar voice on the other end. Sarah's heart raced. "Nancy, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry." Pelosi's voice was calm but firm. "I know you were manipulated, Sarah, but you have to come forward. You have to help us expose the people behind this." Sarah hesitated, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared, Nancy. They'll come after me." "We'll protect you," Pelosi promised, "but you have to do the right thing." After a long pause, Sarah nodded, even though Pelosi couldn't see her. "Okay, I'll do it." Sarah's decision to come forward set the stage for a dramatic press conference. Flanked by Pelosi and a team of security personnel, Sarah faced the cameras, her hands trembling as she clutched a prepared statement. "My name is Sarah Collins," she began, her voice shaky but determined. "I was a trusted aide to Speaker Pelosi, and I betrayed that trust. I was manipulated by a group of individuals who used fear and intimidation to force me to leak false documents. I take full responsibility for my actions, but I also want to expose the truth." The room erupted into a frenzy of questions, but Pelosi stepped forward, silencing the crowd. "This is not just about Sarah," she said, her voice steady and strong. "This is about a coordinated effort to undermine our democracy. We will not rest until everyone involved is held accountable." The press conference was a turning point. While some remained skeptical, many saw Sarah's confession as a step toward the truth. The narrative began to shift, with Pelosi's allies using the moment to rally support. Marjorie Taylor Greene, undeterred by the revelations, launched a counterattack. At a rally in Florida, she dismissed Sarah's confession as a desperate attempt to cover up the truth. "Nancy Pelosi is a master manipulator," Greene declared to thunderous applause. "She's using Sarah as a pawn to distract from her own crimes." Greene's base rallied behind her, but her rhetoric alienated many of her Republican colleagues. Behind closed doors, some began to question her judgment. "She's gone too far," one senior Republican senator confided to a colleague. "This is damaging the party." But Greene remained defiant. "I don't care what they think," she told a close advisor. "The people are with me, and that's all that matters." The House Ethics Committee's investigation into the scandal deepened, with new evidence emerging almost daily. Investigators uncovered a network of Republican operatives who had orchestrated the scheme, using dark money and encrypted communications to coordinate their efforts. One of the key figures in the investigation was a shadowy political consultant named Victor Kane. Kane, a former Republican strategist with ties to far-right groups, was revealed to be the mastermind behind the forged documents. His arrest sent shockwaves through Washington, with many calling for a broader investigation into the influence of dark money in politics. Pelosi, seizing on the momentum, introduced legislation to increase transparency in political funding. "We cannot allow our democracy to be hijacked by shadowy figures with hidden agendas," she declared at a press conference. "This is about protecting the integrity of our institutions." As the midterm elections approached, the political landscape grew even more volatile. The scandal had galvanized both sides, with Democrats rallying around Pelosi and Republicans doubling down on their attacks. Pelosi faced a tough re-election battle in her California district. Her opponent, a charismatic young Republican named Daniel Carter, seized on the scandal to paint Pelosi as an out-of-touch elitist. "Nancy Pelosi has been in Washington too long," Carter declared at a campaign rally. "It's time for new leadership that puts the people first." Pelosi fought back, emphasizing her record of fighting for accountability and transparency. But the attacks took their toll, and her once comfortable lead in the polls began to shrink. In the midst of the campaign, Pelosi received an unexpected call from an old rival, former Republican Congressman Justin Amash. Amash, a libertarian-leaning independent, had been a vocal critic of both parties, but had recently grown disillusioned with the direction of the GOP. "I don't agree with you on everything, Nancy," Amash said over the phone, "but what you've done to expose the truth, it took guts. I want to help." Pelosi was taken aback but grateful. Amash's endorsement gave her campaign a much-needed boost, particularly among independent voters who were tired of partisan gridlock. As Election Day approached, the nation held its breath. The stakes were higher than ever, with control of Congress hanging in the balance. Pelosi and Greene, though no longer colleagues, remained central figures in the national conversation. On the eve of the election, Pelosi addressed a packed crowd in Los Angeles. "This isn't just about me," she said, her voice filled with emotion. It's about the kind of country we want to be, a country where the truth matters, a country where no one is above the law. Meanwhile, Green held a rally in Texas where she delivered a fiery speech to thousands of supporters. "This is our moment," she declared. "We will take back our country, and we will make them pay for what they've done." Election night was a roller coaster of emotions. Pelosi watched the results come in from her campaign headquarters, surrounded by her family and closest advisors. The race was closer than anyone had anticipated, but in the end, Pelosi emerged victorious. Green, though no longer in office, celebrated the victories of her allies across the country. "This is just the beginning," she told her supporters. "The fight goes on." The midterm election results sent shockwaves across the country. The Democrats had narrowly retained control of Congress, but the margins were razor-thin. Pelosi's victory in her California district was a hard-fought battle, and her opponents wasted no time in challenging the results. Allegations of voter fraud and irregularities were quickly dismissed by election officials, but the damage was done. The nation remained deeply divided, with both sides digging in their heels. In the days that followed, protests erupted in cities and towns across America. In Washington, D.C., thousands gathered outside the Capitol, waving flags and chanting slogans. On one side of the National Mall, Pelosi's supporters held signs that read, "Accountability Matters" and "Democracy Lives." On the other side, Green's backers carried banners proclaiming "Stop the Steal" and "Green 2024. The media frenzy reached new heights. Cable news networks dedicated hours of coverage to analyzing the election results, with pundits offering wildly different interpretations of what it meant for the future of American politics. Social media platforms became battlegrounds, with hashtags like #Pelosi Victory and #Green 2024 trending for days. Pelosi, now more determined than ever, returned to Washington with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to fight for the principles she believed in. Her first order of business was to push through the legislation she had introduced to increase transparency in political funding. At a press conference, Pelosi addressed the nation. "The American people have spoken," she declared, her voice steady and strong. "They have chosen accountability over corruption, truth over lies. We will not let them down." But behind the scenes, Pelosi faced mounting challenges. Her narrow majority in Congress made it difficult to pass legislation, and her opponents were relentless in their attacks. The pressure was taking its toll, both personally and politically. Green, though no longer in office, remained a central figure in the national conversation. Her fiery rhetoric and unapologetic style had galvanized her base, and she was determined to capitalize on her newfound status as a conservative icon. At a rally in Georgia, Green took the stage to thunderous applause. "This is just the beginning," she declared, her voice booming over the crowd. "We will take back our country, and we will make them pay for what they've done." The crowd erupted into cheers, waving signs and chanting her name. Green's message was clear. She was not going away. If anything, she was more determined than ever to fight back. Behind the scenes, Green's team worked tirelessly to capitalize on her momentum. They launched a fundraising campaign that brought in millions of dollars in just a few days, and they began building a grassroots network of supporters who were eager to carry her message forward. Sarah Collins, the whistleblower whose betrayal had rocked Pelosi's world, found herself at a crossroads. After her dramatic press conference, she became a symbol of courage for some and a traitor for others. The media hounded her, and her life was turned upside down. But Pelosi, true to her word, ensured Sarah's safety, relocating her to a secure location under the protection of the FBI. One evening, as Sarah sat in her safe house, she received a visit from Pelosi. The two women sat across from each other, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. "I want to thank you," Pelosi said, her voice soft but sincere. "What you did took incredible courage. You didn't just expose the truth, you helped protect our democracy." Sarah looked down, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like I failed you, Nancy. I failed everyone." Pelosi reached across the table, placing a hand on Sarah's. "You made a mistake, but you owned up to it. That's what matters. Now, we move forward." Sarah nodded, a sense of resolve settling over her. "What's next for me?" Pelosi smiled. "You have a choice. You can start over, away from all of this. Or you can join the fight. We need people like you, Sarah, people who understand the cost of silence. After a long pause, Sarah made her decision. I want to help. I want to make things right. The media frenzy surrounding the scandal reached new heights. Cable news networks dedicated hours of coverage to analyzing every twist and turn, with pundits offering wildly different interpretations of the events. Social media platforms became battlegrounds, with hashtags like #Pelosi Strong and #Green 2024 trending for days. On MSNBC, Rachel Maddow opened her show with a solemn monologue. What we're seeing here is a microcosm of the broader struggle for the soul of our democracy, she said, her voice heavy with concern. Nancy Pelosi has been a tireless advocate for accountability and the rule of law. But this scandal has exposed the lengths to which some will go to undermine her. Over on Fox News, Sean Hannity took a different tone. This is what happens when the left's obsession with power finally boils over, he declared, his voice dripping with disdain. Nancy Pelosi's so-called victory is nothing more than a cover-up. The American people deserve the truth. The media circus only intensified as clips of Sarah's press conference and Green's rallies went viral. Memes flooded social media, with Pelosi's stoic defiance and Green's fiery rhetoric becoming instant fodder for internet humor. Late-night comedians had a field day, with Stephen Colbert quipping, "I haven't seen a political drama this intense since House of Cards," and at least that was fiction. The Senate showdown over the Democracy Integrity Act was one for the history books. The debate was marked by heated exchanges and dramatic moments, with both sides digging in their heels. Pelosi, watching from the gallery, felt a sense of déjà vu as the familiar partisan divide played out once again. Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, took to the floor to denounce the bill. "This legislation is a solution in search of a problem," he declared, his voice dripping with disdain. "It's nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to stifle free speech and silence conservative voices." Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader, fired back. "This bill is about transparency and accountability. It's about ensuring that the American people know who is funding our elections. If my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have nothing to hide, they should have no problem supporting it." The tension in the chamber was palpable as the vote was called. In the end, the bill passed by the narrowest of margins, with Vice President Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote. Pelosi, watching from the gallery, felt a surge of pride. "This is a victory for democracy," she told her staff, "but the fight is far from over." The relentless pace of the scandal and its aftermath took a toll on Pelosi. Late one night, as she sat alone in her office, she received a call from her daughter, Christine. "Mom, you need to slow down," Christine said, her voice filled with concern. "You're not invincible, you know." Pelosi sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I know, sweetheart, but there's so much at stake. I can't afford to slow down." Christine hesitated. "I get that, Mom, but you're not just the Speaker of the House. You're my mom, and I need you to take care of yourself." Pelosi's eyes filled with tears. "I'll try, Christine, I promise." As the months passed, Green's influence began to wane. Her extreme rhetoric and conspiracy theories alienated many of her Republican colleagues, and her fundraising efforts fell short of expectations. The media, once enamored with her fiery persona, began to turn on her, with even conservative outlets questioning her judgment. At a rally in Georgia, Green faced a smaller crowd than usual. Her speech, once filled with fiery rhetoric, fell flat. "They're trying to silence us," she declared, her voice lacking its usual conviction. "But we won't back down." But the crowd's response was muted, and Green left the stage feeling a sense of unease. For the first time, she began to wonder if her time in the spotlight was coming to an end. As the sun set over the Capitol, Pelosi stood on the steps, watching the city come alive with the lights of evening. The battle for the soul of the nation was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. Green, meanwhile, retreated to her home in Georgia, where she began to plot her next move. "This isn't over," she told herself. "Not by a long shot." The nation remained deeply divided, but the fight for democracy continued, and as long as there were people willing to stand up for the truth, there was hope for a brighter future. In the months that followed, the nation began to heal. The Democracy Integrity Act, though controversial, marked a turning point in the fight for transparency and accountability. Pelosi, now a symbol of resilience, continued to fight for the principles she believed in. Green, though diminished, remained a force to be reckoned with. Her influence waned, but her base remained loyal, ensuring that her voice would not be silenced. As the sun rose over the Capitol, Pelosi stood on the steps, watching the city come alive with the promise of a new day. The battle for the soul of the nation was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of hope. The fight would continue, and so would she.